Are you strolling around minding your own business? Well, you have come across Over Underrated, a music podcast with Fran and Babs. Welcome. And if you're wondering why I am being so aggressive in this introduction, it's because I am delighted to be picking the Stranglers today as my underrated act, a band that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. We're going to be talking about the Ramones as the overrated pick today because we've loosely themed this the 70s punk episode, and I hope you enjoy, learn, and come back on the other side for some more action.
Oh, hang on. Yeah, what are we calling this podcast?
Was it over underrated?
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
Welcome to the latest episode of Over Underrated with Fran and Babs. How are you doing today, Fran? And what have you been listening to?
You can't see me, guys, but I have a full moustache on my face because it's Movember. I have no idea if that's a UK thing or is that across the world, Babs?
I think it's an Anglophone world thing, right? Because I think they're similar in Australia, at least. But yeah, do you want to explain what Movember is for our international listeners?
It means that you have to grow a moustache to show support and raise money for men's mental health and prostate cancer. And I am doing this. My moustache is bushy. People have compared me to Freddie Mercury in Live Aid and also a gay porn star. So enjoy those
I
images.
mean, two of one, half a dozen of the other, in all honesty. I told Fran that he looked like a 30s fighter pilot. And he said that was one of the better compliments that he received. So happy to be here to boost your ego, Fran.
Regarding what I've been listening to, I have begun the mission that is the 2021 best of playlist. So I have been listening to a lot of this year's music, and I will say that I am enjoying the Bleachers song with Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, Bruce Springsteen comes back once again. Can't take him up.
So the guy from the Bleachers is the guy who writes most of like Taylor Swift and Lorde songs.
It's Jack Antonoff, isn't it?
That's the ticket.
Yeah.
Although randomly he has no success, I think, in the UK with his band. Yeah, that's my earworm of the week. How about yourself?
So I have just listened to Placebo's latest song. They're going to have a new album coming out. And they released a song called Beautiful James that I wasn't such a fan of. But the new one, Surrounded by Spies, is great. And a lot of people have been comparing it to Sleeping with Ghosts era Placebo because it's a bit more electronic. And I'm a big fan of that. So that was today. But actually, I've been quite obsessively listening to the Australian band DZ or DZ Death Race, which I've known about for ages, but I've never gone beyond, exploring, let's say, singles. But I just got really, really obsessed with them in the last few weeks for some reason, to the point where I've been buying records and ordering CDs and stuff. And I think Gina Works at Hearts and Black Rat from their album Black Rat is really worth listening to.
I remember the name back in the day. I can't remember the songs. Regarding Placebo, I also agree with you. And last time I saw Placebo live, it was horrendous because he had a throat infection and couldn't sing. And they didn't cancel the concert. He sang in a monotone the entire time. And I kept thinking, why didn't you cancel this? This is horrendous. So he owes me a decent concert. So I will be.
You hear that, Brian?
He owe me, Brian.
But we're going a bit further in the past for this week's episode, which is it 70s brackets punk rockers, the theme? Or 70s rock? I don't know.
Well, it's two bands who, unlike a lot of the punk bands, didn't disintegrate by 1980. And they carried on.
Indeed, and involved. So today we are discussing Ramones as overrated and the Stranglers as underrated. So let's start with our overrated pick. So Fran has taken on the mantle of Ramones Take-A Downer. What's your view on Ramones and how did you put your playlist together?
Well, people always bark on about the Ramones being, the godfather of punk alongside the Stooges. And I just kind of think, well, they're a sort of band that people don't seem to ever criticize. But when you actually look at their 20 years of music, are they actually any good apart from their debut album? And I thought, like, I hadn't actually really listened to most of their stuff. I knew, like, you know, the big hitters. So I thought, I don't actually know many 80s, 90s Ramones. So I'm going to declare they're overrated before I even investigate. And then we can discuss if they are or not. Because I think they're a band that, you know, people know the t-shirt more than the music.
Yeah.
And I'm doing some research, and it turns out they have sold more t-shirts than records, which is never a good sign.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
I think alongside like Nirvana and Guns N' Roses, they are like the high street rock and roll t-shirt, which was teenagers buy and may not be able to name many songs. I think Ramones probably more than like Guns N' Roses and Nirvana. I think they are like hey, this is a cool t-shirt, but I don't ever want to listen to the music.
Yeah, this is the thing. So I came in knowing very little about Ramones. I had to do word association, it would be okay. Yeah, punk pioneers, New York, CBGBs, and then I wrote image co-opted by the mainstream because it's that thing of, I think, alongside Iron Maiden as well. I would add it's one of those bands that H&M sells their t-shirts to people who have no idea what it is because the visuals are good. So I knew and liked Blitzkrieg Bop. That was about it. And I just presumed that they hadn't had that many albums and all their songs sounded like Blitzkrieg Bop. So it was interesting to go through your playlist because I think every song is from a different album. So there's quite a wide range there. And it was interesting to research them a little bit as people because it's a weird and wild story with the Ramones. And I hadn't even realized that they had lineup changes and there's kind of 2 generations of Ramones. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Yeah, I always knew there's more than the 4 Ramones. And I knew that all 4 members have now sadly died. But I didn't know about Joey and Johnny and their relationship, which is very interesting.
And the politics. I had no idea that 1, if not 2 of them were conservative, which seems mad for a punk band. But there we go.
It's strange that the prototype punk band had very little punk views, you know, like they had a uniform and they were into making money. Like apparently like in CPGBs, they made sure that one of the members or the band was on the door so they could make as much money as possible and no one could steal their money, which is very punk ethic. So,
but I mean, reading about, is it Johnny, the conservative one? Did you read about what his dad was like? Because
I know he went to military school. Did he also?
He went to military school. And when he was describing his dad, the story that was on Wikipedia is like when Johnny broke his toe and didn't want to go and play in some kind of game, some sports ball game. I know sports. His dad was like, "What? Are you a baby? Have I raised a baby? Who gives a fuck if you've got a broken toe off you go?" And I'm like, well, you know what? I think when you're raised in that kind of environment, either you adapt or you don't. And he went to military school and apparently had quite a lot of, you know, self-disciplinary attitudes, whereas Joey was more liberal and very different. So I don't know, is it kind of Morrissey and Marr vibes going on here of 2 very different people coming together? And then the story, which we're going to come to in one of the songs of some ladies, is it's all very incestuous and weird.
So it's also interesting that so Dee Dee seemed to be the main songwriter. Tommy seemed to be the face and the production guy. They all had their little sort of bits there, and Johnny was like, you know, the Fast and Furious and the boss, and then Joe was like kind of what he would say, the freak. He was the outsider. So, you know, a lot of punks, I guess, come from being an outsider, and he was probably the most outside of all those people, because I think growing up he was quite a gawky, shy child. Then as soon as he put on the leather jacket, he then, you know, found his real self. So he's kind of a strange frontman, I guess. But
totally.
They're an interesting band. But I guess my playlist, I thought we should discover their entire back catalogue. So that's why I chose, you know, as much as I could through the album history rather than just putting the hits. But I have included a few of the singles to make it fair.
I did not know a single song
on the
playlist. Yeah, I really don't know Ramones because, as discussed on kind of our punk episode, it's not really a genre that I'm very much into. and I know Blitzkrieg Bop because I think everyone does. Like I said to my boyfriend today, "Oh, I'm gonna do Ramones," and he was like, "Who?" And I played Blitzkrieg Bop, and he's like, "Oh, hey ho, let's go, got it." But I don't know how much beyond Blitzkrieg Bop I listen to, because even Sheena is a punk rocker and I Want to Be Sedated, I'd kind of forgotten what they sounded like. I had to go and listen again and be like, oh, right. So I never paid them much due. So I was really glad that you put this playlist together, because it surprised me. It surprised me, and it's not 10 songs that are the same, in my opinion. So,
I am embarrassed to admit that I heard the Offspring's version of I Want to Be Sedated before I knew it as a Ramones song.
Well, there we go. Listen, you're showing your age. That's all. You're showing your age.
Yeah, I think 3 of these or 4 of these are singles. Let's restart off with the first track.
Let's do it.
Overrated.
So what is it called?
We have Cretin Family from the farewell 1995 album Adios Amigos,
which has a fantastic album cover. I recommend checking it out. Dinosaurs with what are the Mexican hats called? Sombreros?
Yep.
That's all you need to know.
But yeah, so this was again another lineup change, and we, instead of Dee on the bass, we had CJ, the young bass player, and he sings the vocals on this track. Do you know that?
No, I was going to ask you, because it doesn't seem to be the same singer on every song. So I was hoping you'd research that.
Although, I'm thinking, so live, what the hell's Joey doing when other people are singing? He's just standing there. He doesn't.
He's the best of the band.
I mean, he doesn't even have a tambourine in the live show. I mean, the poor guy. This isn't exactly great. It does, to me, it sounds like just lazy punk. Like, if you could close your eyes and think of a punk band, this is what you probably imagine them sounding like. And it has the amazing lyric, "Why don't you get a hula hoop and do the Cretin hop?"
Yes.
Which we've all thought about from time to time.
See, I actually quite like this song. It was a surprising open, because again, I was expecting the Ramones sound from the early 70s, and this is a bit rockabilly, a bit more interesting. And because I only really know Blitzkrieg Bop with the vocals that you can barely hear, here it's much clearer. The guitar and bass are much more sophisticated. And I picked up on sort of Dead Kennedys and Suicidal Tendencies vibes, which I think I'm like, okay, that's an interesting evolution. This is 95. They're going with the times. So I really enjoyed this song. It didn't seem like, what's the word? Punk by numbers.
Do you know what's weird about this?
No.
Is that this was written by Dee Ramone, even though he quit the band 7 years previous. He still wrote songs for the band, even though he wasn't in the band.
What I read wasn't he the main songwriter, but he didn't sing at the beginning because he couldn't sing and play bass at the same time. Bless him. I also can't very well. So
that's the reason why in Joy Division, Bernard didn't sing, because he couldn't sing and play the guitar at the same time.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
And when,
he's definitely evolved.
So when Ian Curtis died, basically he made sure that when he sang, there was no guitar. So if you listen to Early New Order, that there's barely any guitar. And then he would do the guitar lines in between his vocals to make it easier.
Amazing.
Yeah, and CJ is the bassist and he sings the song, but I guess he was a modern era. So yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of Cretin Family, but I wanted to show
I enjoyed it.
The sound of the band as it petered out, because sadly, that was a farewell album and it didn't even sell. It only was a success in Brazil, where they were massive. Wow. And because apparently, of course, Brazil was going through a bad time in the 90s. They looked at punk rock as being a savior. So basically, they go to Brazil, and there's stuff on the YouTube of this, and it's like the Beatles. They couldn't drive a car, and then they go back to New York and play to 200 people. What
I do know is that Spin magazine voted Ramones the second greatest band in the world after the Beatles, which I think is absolute fucking madness.
But also their name's from the Beatles. You know that.
Yes, I did. I learned that this time, because Paul McCartney would check in as Paul Ramon, I imagine, because it's without the E on the end. It's quite nice, the whole changing the surnames to seem uniform, and that definitely works. And when bands look all the same, like the Strokes or White Stripes, it is quite striking. So it's a nice visual move, but
And again, you know,
not for me.
if you look at the UK punk bands, they're supposed to hate the Beatles. And here's the Ramones, who started off the movement kind of, and they're named after a Beatle, and they love pop music. You know, they weren't trying to say that.
It doesn't surprise me that they love pop music. Well, especially we see the next song that you've picked, but there is definite pop sensibilities in some of these songs.
Yeah, they weren't like saying, you know, everything before us is terrible. I mean, I know they went on record to say that they hated prog rock and they couldn't play it, but like, yeah, they weren't like. I think the 70's UK scene was a bit more posery. Like if you're a punk, you're a proper punk. I don't think.
Well, this is what
that.
I think we're going to come to in discussing the Stranglers as well, because that's part of it too. Their position in that scene, how they were perceived, and everything going on around. It's quite interesting. But we are moving backwards in a way with the next pick, before the 70s.
So I don't know why I chose this order, but here we go. So this is the Phil Spector Ramones. He did one album, and we have "Baby I Love You," and it's from the End of the Century album, I believe.
I hated this.
Did you?
I absolutely hated it. And I didn't know it was a Phil Spector song. So my first note was, what pseudo Burt Bacharach nonsense is this? And then I looked it up and I was like, right, what Phil Spector nonsense is this? Because it's a Ronettes cover. I didn't like the song. And I thought, like, are the Ramones trying to be Burt Bacharach? And I was like, oh no, it's a cover version. But I'm like, but it's a cover version that adds absolutely nothing. There isn't a Ramones spirit going through it. So I thought, what the hell is the point of this song?
In the UK, this was on a KFC advert. And apparently this was actually only successful in the UK when it came out as well. And Phil Spector, basically, he wanted to make them as commercial as possible because he saw them as being the last classic pop band. So that's why he thought, well, let's do a classic pop band that I basically own. And then
So Phil Spector produced this album?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And so he chose his own song to make himself some more money, probably. And and half the band hated it and half the band loved it. I think Joey, as a pop guy, he loved it. But Johnny, as a proper guitar player, was like, no, this is rubbish, meant sending out. And then it didn't do anything. So they basically kicked that sort of sound away forever. And they went back to the old 1, 2, 3, 4, kind of. But I don't mind. I mean, to me, it is what it is. No, it's just it's a soppy 60s track. But then I then thought, hang on. So recently, Sid Vicious had a hit with an old soppy song with his cover of My Way. So maybe that's another thing they thought it could do, a punky version of a classic.
I mean, Sid Vicious's cover of My Way had a Sid Vicious twist on it. This doesn't at all. So I really thought, what's the point? And I didn't do more research to see that it was a Phil Spector album, but now it all makes sense, and it absolutely does not do it for me at all.
Yeah, I think it was like the last push, because in America they didn't sell anything. I think like a couple of years ago, the debut album has just become gold, selling 500,000.
Are you serious?
It took 38 years for that to happen. That's how little albums Ramones sold. That's why, that's that about this one more t-shirts.
But there was something on Wikipedia as well, wasn't there, about how they basically toured solidly for 22 years, playing over 2,000 concerts, something like that. Let me actually check those facts, because I can't remember.
There was no money, and basically each record, it's not a punk attitude, but most punks want to sell records, but they really always wanted to sell records, and they would do anything they could to sell more records. So let's get Phil Spector in. Let's be in a film. Let's do this. They would do as much as they could to get some success, because I guess they were bored of playing the same club circuit again and again and again.
Yeah. So the stats on Wikipedia are they played 2,263 concerts, touring virtually nonstop for 22 years. That is exhausting. No wonder they fell out.
Yeah, these days it takes 4 years for a band to tour sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, there we go.
Hello, this is your editor here, Fran. I've just realised we don't mention what the song was called. So this is Today You Love, Tomorrow The World. Thank you.
So next pick is their debut, because I had to have a song from the debut album. And I wanted to include one track with the classic 1, 2, 3, 4 from DD.
Oh, but it's not the only one that has 1, 2, 3, 4 on this list.
But I guess it's like the first time they kind of did it. So this is from the debut album, and it's exactly what you think a Ramones song would be. It's like the emergency 3-chord punk. But I said to Babs off the record, I said that I've listened to this playlist so many times, and I then forget how the song goes because a lot of them are quite similar. So yeah, it's just it's fine. But then I think they repeat the chorus like 3 times at the end, maybe so it would go past the 2-minute mark, because most of the tracks on the debut album barely hit 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, this is the polar opposite to the Kent playlist that you provided for me a while ago. And I already listened to these tracks today, and I had to work and stuff. But I was like, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna have time because I know it's Ramones, and I think the longest song you picked was 3:45.
I'm sorry.
With this song, it was one of the ones on this list where I didn't really have an opinion straight away. I had to listen to it a few times to form a more solid opinion, and in the end, I decided I liked it. But I think my favorite part is the beginning before the vocals kick in. I think the guitar
1, 2, 3, 4.
yeah. No, the instrumental bit, because it's quite a long instrumental bit before the vocals kick in. And I really liked how the guitar, bass, and drums are playing together. For the vocals, I'm not a fan of because it's similar. I just think they can sound very whiny and annoying, and this is one of them. I'm not a huge fan either of the section after they go 1, 2, 3, fear. I called it, their Eurovision key change. And I also wasn't a fan of the topic because it seems like it's singing from the point of view of a Nazi. Where have we seen this nonsense before? That's right. Check out our punk episodes back from season 1. I feel like I had prejudices about the Ramones, that they were a punk band that would have had 2 albums and that was it, and that they wouldn't have been very good musicians. But actually, I think they're playing really well on this one. So it was despite not, being an amazing, perfect song, it really surprised me and started changing my mind a little bit on Ramones.
Yeah, I mean, they're not bad players, are they? I think Tommy said that he learned the drums because they couldn't find another drummer.
I mean, it's quite standard, isn't it? A lot of the time, I know so many people where it's like, yeah, I learned the drums because my friends wanted to form a band and everyone else already played something else.
The reason they got their manager was because he said that he would buy them a drum kit. That was that's what made them choose him, because they had no drum kit yet.
Incredible.
So yeah. And then we're moving on. So this was I think as a well-known Ramones track. It's called Pinhead from 1977, and the Gabba Gabba.
Madness.
Part. Yeah, the Gabba Gabba is like a trademark thing alongside Hey Hey Let's Go. And
I didn't know that.
You see him live, they bring out like a goblin holding the sign saying Gabba Gabba. I don't know why. And a pinhead is like, another name for a freak. So basically it's like Joey is singing about himself, but it's kind of repetitive, isn't it? It's very competitive.
Yeah. The beginning intrigued me so much because Gabba Gabba, we accept you, we accept you, one of us. And the distortion on the vocal, I thought, what is this? This is almost psychedelic. This is going to be super interesting. And then it turns into, a more standard Ramones song. Like, I don't think it's bad. There's definitely worse on this list, but it's not fantastic either.
Do you reckon someone's got those lyrics on a tattoo somewhere?
Oh, someone does. Someone does. It never fails to surprise me. Tattoos that people get and the obscurity. Like my ex-boyfriend, who was into punk, he was really into a band called the Bouncing Souls for a while. I don't know if you've heard of them. No. Certainly hadn't until I met him, though they have a very good song called Argyle. So I do recommend that. But I remember him taking me on a tour through the kinds of tattoos, the kinds of Bouncing Souls tattoos that people got, which is, this punk band, not that well known. I remember people got tattoos in their mouths. And I'm just like, how... I don't know. I'm quite a boomer when it comes to tattoos. I think because I know that if I got any tattoo, I would get bored with it. I would get bored of it within a week.
Definitely.
Within a week, I'd want to do it. And if I had got a tattoo when I was a teenager, it would be like, I don't know, Radiohead lyrics. And I cannot imagine trying to explain that now to someone. So
like if someone could invent invisible ink for a tattoo, so basically it would last 10 years. I'm sure I maybe I've had one, but
there are henna tattoos, right? So that's
but a bit longer, like 10 years, I guess would be like, because then if I got one 18, by the time I'm 28, I may still like some things. By the time I'm 48, probably not going to be into the same sort of stuff, maybe. So a 10-year tattoo would be a big hit. But I can't think of anything I want on my skin forever, to be fair.
No, absolutely not. There's this great quote which says that a tattoo is a permanent reminder of a temporary feeling. And that's absolutely what it is. I mean, and that can be nice sometimes because, if you're celebrating something good, if you're feeling low, maybe you can look at your, I don't know, tattoo of a shark to remember when he went diving in the Great Barrier Reef and remember the good times. But yeah, as you say, you can wear a t-shirt or look through your Facebook photos.
I have no metal, no ink, because I am not cool at all, I guess.
Piercings I do like, but that's a story for another time.
That's the kinkier side of the podcast. Moving on to other kinky things. Every time I eat vegetables, it makes me think of you, I believe.
Thanks, Fran.
From the 1983 album Subterranean Jungle. I like this. It's bonkers.
Absolutely bonkers.
Have you listened to the lyrics?
Oh, I've got them written out.
Please,
do you want me to read them out?
Yes, please.
She was a really good friend to me, yeah, but they took her away, tossed her in the bin. Now she's hanging out in East Berlin. Ow! She had a very bad affair with some cat from Hiroshima. She turned into a head of lettuce. She eats Thorazine in her farina, but they took her away, tossed her in the bin. Now she's hanging out in East Berlin. Ow! What the fuck?
It's original. You got to give them that. I kind of like it. I think it's fun. I think the drums, it starts to sound a bit 80s. It's got like an effect on the drums. It takes it a bit. And it's kind of moving into maybe like rock rather than punk. But I'm happy I discovered this. I quite liked it. How about you?
This wasn't one of my favorites. I think the lyrics really made me laugh. The title already made me laugh. I'm like, where is this going? And the lyrics are really good. But again, I found the vocals whiny and thought this was fairly standard Ramones fare. So I have to say, I can't really even remember what it sounds like. Just madness is what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, that's kind of my attitude to a lot of these. It's like they failed to have a hook, a lot of them, and that's what. And yeah, I guess Joey isn't the best singer, so I
don't think it's just him being the best singer. It's whoever's producing it. You know, there needs to be some kind of effect. I mean, I obviously, as you can hear, have no idea what I'm talking about, but it's raw and not in a good way. I think there needs to be some gloss on there to not make it sound so grating. It's in my ears anyway.
Well, I mean, the next song is to me quite grating, which is Warthog indeed. From the 84. This is Too Tough to Die, and this is when they wanted to go back to the roots, to be like the extreme punky band they were known as. So they made it sound more grittier. And I believe this is Dee Dee on vocals, which is why it sounds a bit different. And this is not for me whatsoever. I think it just sounds embarrassing. The lyrics is all about being a junkie, is it? I think. Oh,
I didn't look up the lyrics for this one. So you tell me.
Sick. It's like, these drugs are making me sick and that sort of stuff. It's like, okay. I guess, when it's 1984 and you've been in a punk band for 8 years, I think you can maybe move on from those sort of lyrics, but maybe I'm an old man looking back. But yeah, this was not for me at all. I think you agree, maybe.
A bit, yes. So I found the beginning really annoying and I don't like the vocals. Again, I've put Suicidal Tendencies vibes, but not as well done, because I keep saying Suicidal Tendencies because that's a guy who's kind of speak rapping over guitar music, but he does it quite well. Is it Dee Dee doesn't, but I quite like the frantic guitar and accompanying drums. So ignoring the vocals and just those bits with the sort of jerky time signatures, I quite like that. And I said that I would love to be able to do a Wild Boar remix if I could, and to just cut up the bits that I like and make it my own, because I think there's something there, but there's too much going on that's not good.
So yeah, I've brought up the lyrics because I've now reminded myself why I chose this. So this is the verse. I shot some dope. I feel so sick. It's a sick world. Sick. Drugs and bitches and junkies and fags. Artificial phonies. I hate it. And later on he says, it's a drugs and lies and a rip-off bet. Drugs and bitches and commies and queers. Artificial phonies. I hate it. So a bit of fun there from Dee Dee.
Wow. And I mean, it's that thing of, is it a bit like I'd Love to Change the World by 10 Years After, where he says freaks and fairies, but you know that they are part of those. It doesn't sound like here Dee Dee sees that he's part of those and he's supporting them, is he? So
yeah, but then later on, it's got a song called like 53rd Street about him being a rent boy and then stabbing his what's the customer called again for a rent boy?
John.
His John with a razor blade.
Wow.
So
is that true or is that just
well,
artistic?
people don't know. And he
Wow.
refused. And in the interview, he refused to go. He elaborated on it.
Interesting. I mean, and this is also in 1984, where I guess the AIDS crisis is starting, and they're in New York, which is sort of at the epicenter of it. That's not nice. That's not nice.
Is it him trying to sound punk and dangerous, or is it him being a prick?
Oh, I don't know. It could, a bit, again, column A, column B.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
So, moving on to Anxiety. In 1992, in the 90s, it's their first album without Dee Dee playing the bass. I think it's written by co-written by the drummer Marky Ramone, who went in and out of the band.
Honestly, Marky Ramone just makes me think he's like Marky Mark's brother. I can't disassociate it with Mark Wahlberg.
It's nice when you meet people who are under 30 who have no idea about Marky Mark's previous music
and showing them a video. Absolutely.
What now? If I was the PR person for Calvin Klein, I'd so like make another video like the 30th anniversary of it or something. So this is the lyrics to Anxiety. Anxiety keeps me happy. Anxiety keeps me happy. Always deaf all day long. Nothing right, nothing wrong. There you go. And that's basically repeated throughout the song. It's interesting that in 1992, when he had grunge, and a lot of his bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana, I think they're still saying they were influenced by the Ramones. So it's strange that they didn't try to maybe adjust their sound, because it's still just a basic punk track, isn't it? Really. What's your thoughts?
Well, actually, this is another one that I quite liked. I like 90s Ramones. I don't know what's going on. It's a bit like Skid Row, isn't it, as well, where I like the later stuff that everyone doesn't like. Maybe I'm just a pure 90s kid. I really like the way that the anxiety repeats, and it makes me laugh that they say anxiety makes me happy. It sounds quite twisted. The guitars and drums are in nice sync. I enjoyed this. It really made me think that I need to go and listen to 90s Ramones, which is not a sentence I thought I would say before listening to your playlist.
Not expected.
Given that I didn't know 90s Ramones existed. Absolutely not.
Well, I ignored one of the albums from the 90s because it's just all covers. Because I thought, well, there's no point doing that one. So yeah, so they did just two albums in the 90s, really. And then moving on to the last Dee Dee album, Brain Drain, which has one of their biggest hits, Pet Sematary. Do you know that song?
No, I don't.
So yeah, they did the theme tune to the movie, and that was kind of like their last kind of big hit, I think. Pet Sematary. It had like an actual proper music video to it. But 00 UFO, I don't know if this is Dee Dee who saw the UFO, or if he just make up as it goes along. It's very pedestrian, I thought. It just felt rushed to me, we need some filler. Another miss for me. How about you?
For me, it was similar to Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World, where I had to listen a couple of times to figure out whether I liked it. I liked the chorus and the harmonies, which I guess don't always happen on Ramones songs.
No.
And the guitars are quite driving, but I would say it's middle of the table. It's not your average Ramones fare to me, but I'm not in a rush to go and listen to it again.
If I asked you to sing me the chorus, could you remember it?
Absolutely not.
Same.
And I listened to it twice today. So there we go. Eat the Rat from 1986 off the album, Animal Boy. So I think it's the worst reviewed album. Obviously, as a Rat owner, I'm not a fan of eating rats, guys. Please stop it. Apparently, this is the sound of a band breaking up, because we may mention this in a minute. The relations between Joey and Johnny were not good, and refused to be in the studio at the same time together. This meant that I think Joey only sang maybe 4 songs on the entire album. I think Dee Dee at the time was just saying he wanted to just write songs and get the thing finished as fast as possible so he can move on to the next album. And it does sound like that to me. Yeah, this is a weird one, because I wrote that it sounds like such a distilled punk song. It really surprises me that it's from 1986. It feels like they've gone backwards a little bit. And I would have dismissed it completely. But there's this breakdown in the middle, which is so interesting. And it's such a shame that there's this short breakdown and then it goes back to how the song sounds at the beginning, because I think it would have been nice if it went in a different direction. And given that I've been listening to a lot of Stranglers, like absolutely that's what the Stranglers would have done, and probably done a keyboard solo or 5 in between. I think that song could have done with a bit of that. Yeah,
it's interesting how they didn't like go full 80s rack. So most bands by now would be having like loads of synths, maybe some vocoder, maybe a rap. They kind of, I mean, obviously they experimented a little bit with with the Phil Spector stuff. But yeah, it's interesting how they kind of still sounded pretty much the same as the 1978 Ramones. I'm surprised they didn't like get a producer to try and, change things up a little bit, because it is, if I was a Ramones fan by now, would I be bored?
I don't think you would, though.
No.
Because if you're really a fan of that original sound, it's a little bit different to their original sound, but still very clearly Ramones. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think sometimes one admires bands and artists that really match the time. My, I think, unpopular opinion, I really like David Bowie in the 90s. I think he's evolving. I like what he did with Trent Reznor. It's really interesting. And so many people dismiss it. And I'm like, he's absolutely going with the time, and not in an embarrassing way. Like he is helping create that sound as well.
So next is the KKK Took My Baby Away from 1981, Pleasant Dreams. And there's a rumor that
there's many rumors, I think.
This is about Johnny stealing Joey's girlfriend Linda, who went on to become Johnny's wife, and she now owns half of the Ramones
back catalogue.
Yeah, back catalogue. So she's done quite well out of this. But yeah, do you want to mention the lyrics?
She went away for the holidays, said she's going to LA, but she never got there. She never got there, they say. The KKK took my baby away. They took her away from me. Ring me up the president and find out where my baby went. So you can see the vibes. Mm-hmm. So what I read was that, yeah, people thought it was about Johnny stealing, in inverted commas, Linda. But then Joey's brother, Mickey Lee, who, I don't know if you read about this, but there's going to be a HBO show, I think, based on Joey Ramone's life, called I Slept with Joey Ramone, and Pete Davidson is going to be playing Joey Ramone.
Oh, okay.
And it's a book written by this guy, Mickey Lee, and he's involved in the film, so it should be interesting. Anyway, so Mickey Lee says that the song had been written about Joey's relationship with a black woman whose parents disapproved of the interracial relationship. When Lee asked what happened, Joey said, the KKK took my baby away. But then Marky Ramone said it was something else, and it was inspired by Joey's experience at a mental institution, and there was an African-American woman there who disappeared, and that's what he said when she left, kind of with no trace. So a mystery. It's that thing of when you read about Johnny stealing away Linda, I just think it's so casual that it's like, oh, the KKK took my baby away. But then you read that apparently Johnny did used to make fun of Joey for being Jewish, and it's like, well, that's not great. But if it's about like, a real person, it just seems so, I don't know, callous and casual to be like, oh yeah, the KKK took my baby away. It's like, that's, I see what you're trying to do. It's a bit tongue in cheek, but I don't know, it leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth.
But sadly, it's actually quite a catchy chorus.
See, yeah, I wrote that it's punk with pop sensibilities for sure, more than any other song apart from the Phil Spector cover. But it doesn't really do it for me, apart from the harmonies. Again, I quite like when they do harmonies on songs. It works well.
The main riff is quite similar to White Riot by The Clash. But then again, you could say The Clash stole that from the Ramones in the first place. So that completes the playlist. Is there anything else you wanted to mention regarding the history of the Ramones? I
think I've already mentioned my shock that they were voted the second greatest band of all time by Spin. And because I didn't know about Johnny being a conservative, it blew my mind that when they were inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Johnny thanked George W. Bush for his presidency, which I'm like, that is a very un-rock and roll thing to do. And, one of the reasons why I hate Brandon Flowers, because Brandon Flowers, when Green Day released American Idiot, were like, oh, that's un-American. I'm like, fuck off. Anyway, answering the question, do I think they're overrated? I do still think Ramones are overrated. I will say that it's not clear to me how influential they are, because that seems to be the argument, that they were one of the first or the first to write songs that were so short and to really kind of focus on this kind of music, but I struggle to believe that. I think there were lots of other bands doing similar things, and I don't think Ramones were before. I mean, even in terms of timing, right? Because their first album was from 76, okay, kind of the year before punk exploded, but there were other bands doing similar things.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, I don't think they're as overrated as I thought before this playlist, because clearly they experimented a bit more than I knew about, and I'm honestly keen to go and explore their 90s stuff. Who would have thought?
As per usual, there's a good documentary on the band.
Of course there is. I was waiting to hear. When
it's on Vimeo in the UK for free. It's called End of the Century. So check that out for more further.
So what's the theme? Is it just the history of the Ramones, or
literally? Well, it talks to all the members before they passed away. I think it's literally maybe a year before Joey's death. So you get to have them post Ramones, so they're all quite open. And there's some interesting parts where they ask Johnny about his relationship, and he asks Linda. He refuses to answer some questions, so it's you could tell there's still just resentment. But yeah, it's just mad, obviously, how talking about relationships, like Johnny literally says how right wing it is, and you'd never have a band who would ever say those words these days. Even if they thought it, they would never admit to being proper right wing in the modern climate. It's interesting.
I think there probably are bands like that, but they're in a subcategory, right? Like a mainstream band absolutely wouldn't, which I think makes sense given because it's all about what stage are we in right now. And, the Ramones carried on throughout the 80s. And, even if you don't like Ronald Reagan, as I don't, I think a lot of people have good cultural associations with America in that time period. And it seemed to be a period where, people got richer. It was kind of good times. So I think when it's something like that, it doesn't seem completely alien to me why someone would profess being right-wing, even though I am very much not. Whereas I think in any time of a crisis, after 2008 or now in these COVID times and everything coming afterwards, it kind of seems a bit mad to be like that if you're a band, because it just absolutely seems like you're going along with the mainstream that doesn't seem to be doing very much for you. Depends what country you're in. Obviously, I'm thinking more of the UK than anything else. But yeah, it definitely blew my mind that one or two of them were ardent Republicans.
It's also strange how loyal they were. Like, come on, like if you knew your guitar player who you hate because of his political views, who also allegedly just stole your girlfriend, and you're touring literally 200 dates a year in the same band, the same hotel room, that is some awkward silences for a long, long time. You got to take hat off to Joey to putting up with that. Apparently, when he never took a day off, even with his feeling sick, he would always do a show. Like he said, "I am the Ramones."
That's it. It's a job, isn't it? And it's actually quite interesting. Later on, I'll tell you some things that Jet Black from the Stranglers said about music and music as a job. But if you see it as a job, it's like with anything, you have your colleagues and you have some that you get on with better, worse, and you have to know how to handle it. And if they were very keen to keep it going for whatever reason it was, then yeah, it doesn't surprise me too much that he has that attitude. But I imagine then that you also still think they're overrated.
Yeah, if you look at them musically, like compare them to, say, The Clash or a band we're going to talk about later on, they're not great. I mean, they've got maybe 6 fun tracks, but I wouldn't ever listen to a best of the Ramones, unfortunately. And and previously the albums haven't sold and the album reviews are not good. Like they're basically the first couple of albums get good reviews, and after that is scraping the barrel. Really, I think Yet they have 4.3 million monthly listeners. So people want to listen to them but not pay for them, I think. But we don't know. Is that just the one song?
No, it's not. It's actually not. And compared to the Stranglers, which I'll talk about that. So the biggest song is Blitzkrieg Bop with 183 million, but the next one has 129 million, I Want to Be Sedated. Okay, and then there's a bit of a drop off, 48 million, 42 million, but still it's not, one song has 10 times more listens than the others. So people are listening to them. But I think it's also probably just because they have so many. How many albums do they have?
14.
14, yeah. It's a lot. And does that shoot them in the foot a little bit? I don't know if like you say, you wouldn't listen to a Ramones greatest hits. Actually, I think I probably would if it was a well-curated one that really picked different sounds within the Ramones, not just, the hits from the first few albums.
It's hard, like, I guess, in theory, the average person may not be able to sing more than one Ramones song. So it's hard to say that a band like that are overrated. But I'm kind of going from like the music snobs because of their legacy. You're always like told you can't touch the Ramones, you can't slate the Ramones because of their legacy. And I'm like, well, I mean, you can, because if it's about the music, okay, they did their part, but so did a lot of other bands, like you said. So, so to me, I'm happy they existed. They had a good Simpsons episode.
Yes. Indeed.
We all enjoy saying hey ho, let's go. But maybe let's move on from the Top Shop Ramones t-shirts and maybe try another band. There's quite a lot of bands out there, guys.
Yes, if I had to recommend one right now, it would be Turnstile. Go listen to them instead. They're very interesting, modern punk genre blending.
There we go. And have you heard of a new hip punk band called the Subways?
Oh, tell me more.
On tour in the UK now.
So do you agree that 90s Ramones might be worth listening to? Not an opinion I expected to come with today after this episode. But never mind that, because now we're getting into the really important stuff. I'm going to be waxing lyrical about one of my favourite bands, the Stranglers. Enjoy.
It's an S-Pod thing, the podcast revisiting S Club 7's insane TV show.
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone's binge-watched this, anyone who's not on drugs.
Thank you for bringing this into my life. It was honestly, truly appalling.
Guests help me analyse the show in more detail than anyone ever asked for.
It feels weird to me to say the phrase sex object in a show that was aimed at 6-year-olds.
Do you think this is one of the problems with this show is that 7 is too much?
It's an S-Pod thing from Great Big Owl.
Underrated.
Part 2, Underrated, the Stranglers, picked by me. So I was complaining to Fran because we've done quite a few underrated bands that he picked, and I have been looking for an excuse to talk about the Stranglers for a while. I think they're probably my favorite 70s band, despite the fact I'm still making my way through their back catalogue. So I'm someone who, when I discover a band with such a big back catalogue, I don't go all in immediately because I think you need a bit of breathing space, and I quite like doing it bit by bit. So I've only got to, I think, 95 with the Stranglers. So let's just say this is not totally definitive and I might need to come back.
Are we saying, to make it fairer, this is like the Stranglers Mark 1?
Yes, and then we can do Mark 2. Excellent. Delighted, Fran. So why did I pick the Stranglers? It's a band that people have heard of, and they did Golden Brown. I think they have an incredibly unique sound. I think it's some kind of psychedelic new wave punk. People know Golden Brown, which is an amazing song and probably the only number 2 song to feature a harpsichord. I don't know. Come back to me. But even if you know a few others like Peaches, like No More Heroes, you are barely scratching the surface of the kind of things that they've done. And they started out as a punk band, and that's what they were categorized as a punk band or a pub rock band. And it's really funny to hear them talk about their early years, because it just seems like, yeah, we became a punk band because we all had short hair and wore literally, they were like, we wore straight trousers and DMs. And so we became a band in this kind of context, along with, all the other punk bands. And Jet Black said that apparently he helped out the Sex Pistols drummer with a few tips when they used to play, like used to come up to him quite a bit. But I really think that people don't know their deeper cuts, and they are missing out on absolute geniuses. I think Dave Greenfield's keyboards are epic. And I saw a documentary for once, Fran, where Hugh Cornwell's introducing him and he's saying, oh, he's better than Rick Wakeman. And I would say that's true. You've got JJ Burnell on the bass, absolutely killing it. He is one of my favorite bass players. And I saw Stranglers live in 2015 with Dave Greenfield and JJ Burnell. And JJ Burnell, much of a total arsehole as he is, and I'll come back to that. He came out and just it was like he was trying to make eye contact with everyone. Like, I'm not here to fuck around. I'm here powerfully with my bass. And it was amazing. And I think combined with Hugh Cornwell's vocals and delivery and guitar playing and Jet Black's very solid drumming, I think all of them are amazing musicians. They come together very well, and they've produced such interesting music that no one has ever listened to. So they have 2.2 million monthly listeners, but Golden Brown has almost 10 times more plays than the next song, Peaches. So I think that's a shame. Now, are they assholes? Absolutely. Are they macho pricks? 100%. It really annoys me. I think there are lots of bands that it annoys me that I like them, because on so many levels, they do not match my attitude towards the world. I don't want to go for a drink with any of them. And in this interview in 1990, JJ Burnell, when talking about what set them apart from other punk bands, they were like, yeah, we were a little bit older and we were just more aggressive and violent in this very kind of casual way. And I'm like, this is not a good thing. And also, like, okay, it comes across, especially in their earlier music, it comes across in their attitude, and that is quite attractive, but they really seem like total pricks. So nevertheless, as much as I hate that, their music transcends it. So I'm quite excited to get stuck into this, and I hope that you're at least a bit of a Stranglers fan. Stranglers fan, Fran.
I own the best of the Stranglers from I think 1992. Mm-hmm. So it's the Who Cornwall Stranglers years. Yeah, I've always dabbled with them because when they're good, they're brilliant. So I don't know, like, obviously you've lived in different countries, so I had no idea that Golden Brown was big outside of the UK. I don't know what songs are big in Europe. Is there any other ones?
Well, yeah. So I think the ones that I heard, mostly it was Peaches, No More Heroes, and Always the Sun. Mm-hmm. They, besides Golden Brown, that's what it was. I would say that Stranglers are big in Europe. And I mean, given that one of their members is of French origin and they sing some songs in other languages as well, as we will see, that I think immediately makes them more attractive, at least to audiences in those countries. So I would say they're probably not as big and well known as they are in the UK, but everyone knows Golden Brown.
Yeah. Golden Brown was the first track I knew. I knew Peaches because there's a famous chef in the 80s called Keith Floyd.
Yeah, I read about this as well.
That's random in the theme tune to a Splitting Show, which looking back is a very strange option. And then yeah, I mean, slowly over my life, I would just discover a little gem. So like, I think, I discovered Always the Sun. And then I discovered No More Heroes, and then I discovered Duchess. So they always had songs that I would just eventually find and think, oh, that's a surprising track. Like, Duchess doesn't sound like the same band who did Peaches.
No, not at all.
So yeah, that's why I bought a best of. And I pretty much like, a dozen songs on this, but I've never gone deep on the Stranglers because I don't know. I remember listening to The Raven. I think it's kind of a big album for them, and didn't love it. So every time I've tried, I've kind of hit a wall. But yeah, again, they were a punk band who were just a punk band because they were a British band in 1977 playing loudest music. People I think have teased them because they think that Who Cornwall put on a fake voice. Like, he sneered a lot more in the late 70s than he did in the 80s. So is that fake?
Definitely.
We're playing up to it a lot more.
Well, I don't think it is, because from watching this documentary, they were antagonistic immediately. So they got reputations for playing pretty rowdy shows, and they did this show called like the College Tour or something, where they went to Surrey University in Guildford, which is where a lot of them are from, and where I think they moved to become a band. And they tell the story that they sneaked their friends in through the window to go into the show because it was filmed and everything. And then the rugby lads who were acting as security escorted them out. And when they found out, so they played their songs, and then at the end, Hugh Cornwall goes, Surrey University never represented Guildford, and we're never playing to elite audiences again. And then they just walk off with nothing, and everyone is kind of a bit shocked. And then the first time they went on Top of the Pops, which was to perform the Peaches B-side Go Buddy Go, because Peaches was too controversial for the BBC, Jet Black says that because there was all this, oh God, what are the Stranglers going to do? They literally asked for cleaning products and a Hoover and cleaned up the dressing room, and everyone thought they were insane. And they were like, well, no, but this is the point. So clearly there's like a cheekiness and an anti sort of Puritan streak to them, which that I can absolutely get on board with. But my problem with them, they take it too far. They're not. I feel like sometimes they're rallying about the correct things, like Puritanism. You know, as we mentioned, we have a song that they have a song called "I Feel Like a Wog," which is obviously quite an offensive term, but JJ Burnell, who was of French origin, apparently that was what he was called, and it was this very sort of anti-racist song. So sometimes they get it right, but anytime they're talking about women, it's not liberation for nubiles, as Hugh Cornwell sings on Peaches. It is, we're leery old men and we want to leer at women. You know, it can come with a slice of anti-Puritanism, but it's not equality. So I think as a band, they're the kind of men that are, you know, they don't, apart from maybe JJ Burnell, don't have much to rally against. So they're just rallying for the sake of it. And that's not very attractive to me.
They're quite well educated. I think Hugh Cornwell did a degree as a scientist and went to Gothenburg University.
In Lund, yes.
So, I mean, this isn't exactly the same story as Johnny Rotten. And also, I think JJ can play classical guitar. As you said, Dave's like a virtuoso keyboard player. You know, these are things that you're told not to do in 1977, especially 3 chords and that attitude.
Yeah, and ironically, so Dave Greenfield joined the band after answering an ad in the Melody Maker, which said organist needed to join soft rock band, which is hilarious. That's not at all what they were sounding like at the time.
Yeah, it just took him 10 years to pick up that band. Anyway, so yes, but yeah, so I think a bit like the Police, they were hiding how good they were as a musician, and then this is why when they progressed 10 times more than like the Damned, because they had the skills. You know, they could really play their instruments, and that was kind of useful for them in the future years. But interesting, although I do like the experimental music, like Ramones, their first 2 albums get all of the praise, and other albums do not get good reviews. Like they're kind of around 2 to 3 stars per album. They've never really had a big classic album, like you must own this Stranglers album after their first couple of albums. Interesting. So maybe the experiments just hurt their career as much as promoted it.
Well, yeah, like you, I got into the Stranglers through my mum buying their greatest hits and realizing that it was a bit more than Golden Brown and going in on that. And I think apart from one album that I'm going to discuss, I don't think there is a perfect Stranglers album. But I think Stranglers are a band that you can't just listen to their albums once, because it sounds so different album to album, and they're songs that you just don't really get the first time around. Quite a few on this playlist, the first time I heard them, I didn't like them, and it was on repeated listenings that I was like, oh no, actually this is genius. So I mean, we can start if you like. I you know, in an ideal world, yes, I would have included Golden Brown and No More Heroes, but I deliberately excluded those because, you know, I picked other songs from those albums.
Yeah.
But my opening song is Peaches, because it is, you know, well, according to Spotify, their second most well-known song, and their debut album called Rattus Norvegicus, named after the brown rat. I don't know if you know that, Fran. So there is the rat is a symbol of the Stranglers. So because on the second album as well, No More Heroes, there's flowers over some rats' tails. So it is very much their wheelhouse. And Dave Greenfield used to own rats as well. So there ends the rat chat.
Good man.
And Robert Smith from The Cure says this is one of his top 5 albums. And I think the song is absolutely genius. I think if this song was released today, it still sounds incredibly modern. And Burnell and Cornwell divided songwriting duties on this. Often it would be, you know, one or the other to write it. And I think everything stands out. The sneery bass, the very smooth drums, the keyboards are even menacing. And Hugh Cornwell absolutely acts it out. Like, he is a lechy, sneery man. And he does it really, really well. Even the like vocoded noises of pleasure at the end, where he's just going, it's just, I think it's genius. And yeah, Simon Franks from Audio Bullies called it raw UK old school, which really made me laugh. So I think this more than holds up and feels very authentic.
You're correct. I mean, but yeah, this is a dirty song.
And really fun to play on bass.
Yeah, I knew, because it's a very famous bass line. And my only issue, I think, is that after a minute, to me, I've heard it enough. So I like it for a short section. And then when I was listening to this playlist, I was like, oh, this does go on a bit. And for me, maybe it's a bit too like, I don't know, not embarrassing. But you know, I don't know. This feels like, I don't know. We've discussed my love of sex noises and people talking about sex.
You don't like vocoded Hugh Cornwell being a creep? I'm shocked.
But so I mean, I would listen to it, but it's not like in my top 10 Stranglers because I think it misses out on maybe a couple of hooks.
Mm-hmm. The next song I picked is Sverige, Sweden, from the Black and White album.
Mm-hmm.
I picked this song because, well, first it's in Swedish, and I just thought it'd be a nice touch given that we've done a Kent episode, or we'll be doing a Kent episode depending on when this comes out. I think this is pop post-punk at its best. You've got speedy bass and keyboards. It's 3 minutes. Everything's kind of packed in, and I just think it's a really a great representation of what the Stranglers can do that's mainstream and yet not known about. And I don't know if you went to listen to the English language version, but there's some great lyrics there where it says Sweden, the only country where the clouds are interesting, too much time to think, not enough to do. So there we go.
Yeah, so when I listened to the playlist, I never heard this before, and then when I did the research, I then found out the good news. So it is an English version too. So I have listened to the English version more.
To both, okay.
So
excellent.
Sweden, is it Trouble on the Eastern Front? Is it?
Mm-hmm.
And the video, like if
mad.
Obviously, you think Sweden. No, think an operation theatre with Jet Black being operated, and then at one point his head's removed and his body turns into an organ.
Exactly.
Where the hell did that come from?
And Hugh Cornwell doesn't lip sync along to his vocals. Like this seems like, you know, what some students would put together on
what year was
no
this?
budget.
Was this 80 or something? Or?
This was 78.
Okay, so I guess it's still early on. I mean, it's not like it took maybe to 82 to get some high budget videos, but it's still pretty pathetic.
But what did you think of the song?
So it has I love the racing Dave organ sound and the crunching bass, and it's got that interesting sort of like false break, and then a cool keyboard solo, which is when he plays on his detached body. And I had to listen to this 3 times the Swedish version, not knowing what's about, and then 3 times on the English version, and by the second time I did start to enjoy the track, and but it's an interesting single. It doesn't feel like a single at all to me. Like you really got to listen to it a few times to get into it, I think.
So that's interesting, because for me it's definitely the poppier side of Stranglers, but it just goes to show that even the poppier side of Stranglers is not necessarily immediately gettable. I mean, even Golden Brown is a weird song in a mix of 6/8 and 3/4. So there's always something that wrong foots you, I feel, in almost every Strangler song. I'm very intrigued to hear what you think about this one. It is Peasant in the Big Shitty from No More Heroes, their second album, which all music called faster, nastier and better than Ratus Norvegicus. I think this is probably my favorite Stranglers written song, and it was written by Dave Greenfield, possibly while tripping on acid. Makes sense. I love the weird 9/4 time signature. It's incredibly spooky. The drums kind of lead you in, and they're very urgent, but then the keyboards come in, and then you have the spooky vocoder lyrics, and you're like, what the hell is going on? And then just as you're getting used to the weird time signature, then the chorus and the bridge are in 2/4 or 4/4, something else, I'm not quite sure exactly. I think it's absolutely mad, but somehow works. I don't know why I like this so much, but I do, and I don't get sick of it. What do you think, Fran?
Well, I had never heard this song in my life, and at first I thought it was Hugh Cornwell, because I had no idea that he wasn't like, I thought he sang all the songs. I just thought that because Peaches is sang so differently to Golden Brown, I just thought he had a diverse voice.
Which he does. I think he does. But yeah, it's JJ Burnell also sings, as you were talking about as well.
So I didn't know until reading up this was David singing. And if this is their own Monster Mash, it is a Halloween track for me, the way he sings it,
Well, do you know what? I wrote that, but for a different track coming up later as well. Yeah. We'll come back to that.
And again, you have to listen to this track a few times to really get the full effect. I love the bit when he goes, "Do you like it like that?"
Yeah, do you like it like that? Just a peasant in the big shitty. I mean, yeah, the lyrics. The day is sticky yellow. The night was so untight. The cows go moo moo moo. Is everything all right? Baby digit at my face. Who's the man with a smile, mum? Do you like it like that? I'm just a peasant in the big shitty. And it's just absolutely madness, especially because I would have thought with a title like Peasant in the Big Shitty, I thought it would be some big political song about either being poor or, I don't know, coming from the suburbs and not being, you know, a sophisticated city person. And it is Dave Greenfield tripping on acid. So more of that, please.
Did they play this when you saw them?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
I checked the set list and I would have loved to. And I mean, we haven't mentioned it, but Dave Greenfield unfortunately passed away in 2020 from COVID, which was very sad. And Jet Black is still alive, but I think he's diminished, you know, and he's still an original member of the Stranglers, but doesn't play live anymore. So JJ Burnell is now the only kind of person that's going to be playing live, which is quite sad. But I think Dave Greenfield's a genius.
Over underrated. Sous-évalué. Überschätzt. Överunderskattad. Over underrated.
And then moving on to a very different sounding track.
An incredibly different sounding track. So this is La Folie from their album La Folie in 1982. La Folie means the madness in French. And it's a song sang in fluent French by JJ Burnell. And I think this was the song that changed my mind on the Stranglers. This is their Ultravox song. And
which one?
Well, for me, this is their Vienna, in a way. And when I realized that as well as doing Golden Brown and Peaches, they did this, I was like, bloody hell, I've got to get into this band. And yeah, as mentioned, it's from La Folie. The band says that this refers to the madness of love, and conceptually, each of the songs in the album was intended to explore a different kind of aspect of love. And it's the same album that Golden Brown is from. And this was a single, despite Hugh Cornwell feeling that Tramp would have been a better choice. And as much as I prefer this to Tramp, I do agree with Hugh Cornwell. I think Tramp is much more kind of mainstream. And this song was a single with a video, but only peaked at 47. But I think it's genius. It's so simple. You've got some dreamy synths, bass led with a guitar accompanying. And you've got JJ Burnell in sex god voice. I have to say, like, I know what he's saying and I know what the lyrics are, but I never knew what it was about. Did you look up what it was about, Fran?
Is it about a cannibal or something?
It is about a murderer and a cannibal called Issei Sagawa, who mutilated, cannibalized, then raped his classmate's body at the Sorbonne. He was arrested, but then released after 2 years of pre-trial detention because he was found legally insane and deported to Japan, where he wasn't arrested. And is still alive, not in prison, and like wrote books and was invited to speak and wrote like restaurant reviews in magazines, which I think is absolutely insane. And again, for me, especially with modern eyes, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of sad now that I know what this is about, because it just seems again like, ooh, let's go and talk about some controversial stuff. Let's go and talk about cannibal. But thankfully, until yesterday, I didn't know this, and I still think it doesn't take away from the simple beauty of the song and how smoldering JJ Burnell sounds. And yeah, it's just a very mysterious, beautiful song about madness. Fran?
Yes, I checked out for Tramp, and that was definitely the track they needed to release. But hey, I guess, you know, after you've had a massive hit with Golden Brown, they could basically do what they wanted. So, you know,
I think that was it, wasn't it?
We've got a 6-minute French song.
Tramp is good. I do like Tramp, but Tramp is not a million miles away from No More Heroes. So this is something quite different.
And even like filmed the proper video for us, was a kind of brave.
A weird video, another weird video. It's so strange. So they're in Paris, and I think it's JJ Burnell meant to be going mad, but all he does to show he's mad is like rub his temples a bit and look into the distance. And it's quite homoerotic with Hugh. So there's part of the video is the two of them are walking down these deserted stairs at night, one on one side, one on the other. And they're just looking at each other very meaningfully. And I was like, what? But it's just such a beautiful song. And I mean, given that you don't know French, does that impact your enjoyment? I would think that it wouldn't, that you don't know what he's singing about because he's singing so beautifully.
So I think this falls on the best of and I had never given it much time before until I was told to, unfortunately, because obviously as an English person we hate the French. But yeah, I know he has a French sounding name, but again I thought that was Hugh Cornwall because I'm an idiot. But yeah, it's a decent track. It'd be interesting to know what if they ever did want to record it in English as well. Obviously they did the Swedish one in both languages. But yeah,
I just don't think it will work. Yes, it is the madness. That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work.
You reckon that's the best album?
I think Black Folly is their best album.
Okay.
Yeah, I like every track. I think it's definitely a move away from their punkier stuff, but that's still in the DNA. And there's another song coming up from the album that I picked as well. I think it bridges that even better.
I don't know if you've noticed this. I need to bring it up. I've got a feeling that the Stranglers have the worst album art for any band in history, especially for a band of their success. Have you seen the album covers? They're fucking terrible.
Right. Do you know what? I haven't really analysed it, but now that you say
look
it,
at
I think
Spotify.
you're right.
Look at them.
Yeah.
Look at one for Norfolk Coast. Norfolk Coast. Look at that album. That looks like it's your dad's band who've just had a bit of money and made an album, not a band who've been going for 25 years. Look at it.
Right. I've looked up Stranglers Norfolk Coast, and it honestly looks like they have diversified into an Irish folk band and have learnt the Tory power pose that everyone got taught a few years ago. Yeah, that is madness.
But yeah, is it an album called like Oral Structure or something?
Yeah,
but
that's a statue. Yeah, that's sculpture.
But it's not a good image. 4 guys standing by a big ear. It's not cool in any way. What are you thinking? Who wants that on a t-shirt?
Yeah, so I think an exception. I quite like the black and white album cover, where it's the four. It's quite simple. It's the 4 of them in black on a white album cover, but they're all in different poses. So Jet Black and Dave Greenfield are posing a bit more normally, sort of hands in pockets. But Hugh Cornwell's got his sort of arms on his sides, head down, and JJ Burnell is crouching. And I just quite like the composition of that. And yeah, it's much better than the 4 of them in Rattus Norvegicus, where it's just them standing in a house.
Seriously, I've never known a band to have that bad artwork.
No, I take your point.
And videos, it's like, yeah, maybe this is what happened to them. Maybe it's why they're not a bigger band, because their videos were crap and the records are terrible.
Apart from Golden Brown, like, have you seen the Golden Brown video? I think that's quite nicely done.
I think that's done by Godwin Queen, who made loads of amazing videos back in those days.
I didn't know that.
But yeah, anyway, sorry, we've gone on a tangent.
We've gone on a tangent. Who knows what will be cut?
Let's
but
bring
we
it
are
back.
moving on to the next. Walk On By, which was a single with Old Codger and Tank in 1978, but I think it was then also on Black and White. So this is a cover version. This is a good cover version. Possibly my favorite cover of all time, top 3 at least, because it is a way to make your song your own. It's got all the Stranglers hallmarks of sneery Hugh, sort of almost changing the meaning of the song. You know, the original, it's very walk on by, very soft. He's like, walk on by, you bitch, basically. Complex bass line, and then the pièce de résistance, the keyboard solo. And it is almost doubling back on itself. Like, it's so complex, yet it doesn't drown out the bass, the guitar, or the drums in the background, who absolutely keep up with it. It goes on for fucking ages, but I never get bored of it. And I only found out today that the reason they recorded this, so this is a song from before 78, because Hugh said that they would play in working men's clubs, and people in working men's clubs would complain that they didn't know any of the songs. So they had to learn some cover versions to put in between, so the working men's clubs wouldn't kick off. And this was one of them. So they were doing it, I think, already in 75, 76. And yeah, for some reason decided to release it then. But I think it's absolutely genius. What do you think?
Do you know what? I've heard this version more than the original, I think.
Me too now, but with reason.
So yeah, it's a decent track. I literally probably haven't. I completely forgot that he says, "I'm going for a stroll," and then the keyboard part hits.
Yeah.
This is brilliant that they let it in the final edit.
Yeah.
But again, I was about to say, I also read about it's from 1975, and I think that they had to for the contract they had to fill a gap, so we just decided to release it as a standalone single. But what is interesting is that JJ always has a very similar bass sound, doesn't he? Because this bass sounds exactly the same as Peaches, the same tone, completely. I think
the same tone. Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that, but I don't mind it.
I
don't mind it. I don't mind it because it might be the same tone, but it's never the same throughout. I think probably Peaches is one of the simpler ones because it is quite repetitive. Apart from we have to stay here for the whole summer. Oh, what a bummer! Then it changes for a second. But it is similar to what I was saying about Ramones guitars. It's a driving bass, and when you see it live, holy fuck! Does it hit you in the face? And maybe it's a little bit dirtier and more open here because it kind of has to be to keep up with the keyboard. But yeah, just to finish off, it really surprised me that they released this as a single and that it hit number 21, which I'm like, that I think is, for a song with a fucking 3-minute keyboard solo in the late 70s as punk is happening, that's pretty good. But actually it even could have been higher because apparently the chart performance was impacted because an EP featuring the song had been given away with the first 75,000 copies of their album Black and White. So I don't think it was counted as that. So yeah, it could have been even higher. But yeah, I really think if you like good covers and mad keyboard solos, this is the one for you.
And next up we have...
The next one is also weird. So this is The Man They Love to Hate from Latherley, 1982. I think this is very catchy, weird pop. You've got some minor key verses and you've got a bit of respite in the chorus and bridge, which is, Stranglers all over, where it just kind of takes you in directions that you're not expecting. And I like those changes, and I really like the bits when it's leading back into the verses where it's dun it feels like a journey. And when you read the lyrics as well, it also feels like a journey. And I picked it as well because I think the keyboards here are quite different from Dave. They're almost matching the guitars in the verses rather than it being its own thing. And there's a nice arpeggio going on. I don't know if it's a synth of the guitars, but there's a lot going on. You've got JJ Burnell singing in a sort of one tone sort of voice, which is very different from Cornwell. And actually I would have been intrigued to see Cornwell singing this because it probably would have been quite different. But in a way it makes sense because it's about quite a misanthropic man. So yeah, I think it all pulls together quite well. Fran?
I had not heard this before, but after listening to it a few times, I can really hear an influence by Joy Division.
Yes.
Because on the way he sings and the drum tone also sounds very rhythmic, like Stephen Morris, and the same with the synths.
I'd never made that connection, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, listen to it again. I think Joy Division, and it really does come across. So it's strange that they were being influenced by a band of the same era, because previously, I don't know who they were influenced by. They seem to be doing their own kind of thing, really.
I think, it's kind of probably influenced by their current peers, but also psychedelic rock. Because one thing that I actually didn't get around to watching, Fran, but I have saved it for later. There's, I think, over 1 hour interview of Rick Wakeman interviewing Hugh Cornwell. Yeah, I think you're right with the singing and the drums are very Ian Curtis-esque, but I guess the keyboards in what would have been New Order then are not the same keyboards as Dave Greenfield.
No, I don't think they could play anyway like he could. So yeah, bring on to the next track.
So the next track is Ice from The Raven in 1979. So this is their 4th studio album in 3 years, and they just keep getting weirder. It starts with this very chaotic opening that seems like it's going to get resolved, but then I wrote, it's the Monster Mash of the post-punk era.
Oh,
so
God.
This was my Monster Mash song, I thought, because it's a very disturbing, spiky, icy atmosphere indeed. It sounds like all the instruments are playing a different song. And it's about when the samurai in Japan committed ritual suicide, standard. But I found an interview with JJ where he talks about it musically, which is quite interesting. He says the keyboard is really difficult as it's not sequenced, it's actually played. I remember Dave taking 2 or 3 days at Jets learning to play the sequence manually. Live, it's really fucking difficult to get right and takes the whole track out of sync. The drums and bass kept it together, but because the keyboard was used percussively on the track, if it's not right, then it's completely out. We had fun recording the breaks in it, as we had bottles in the studio which Jet smashed and you can hear him grunting, which I hadn't realized, but then I listened back You absolutely can in the breakdown before the verse. So I think it is possibly the most experimental track on this playlist, along with Pleasant in the Big Shitty, and it somehow works for me.
Yeah, I put down This Is Not As Good As Dutch's because it kind of feels like a precursor to it with the synth bit.
Yeah.
But I then realised that it sounds a lot. I don't know if you've heard pre-Dare Human League.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
it
exactly.
Sounds, a lot like that. It's got that steroid mechanical synth pop sound, and it does sound a lot like that. And it's so crazy how this is literally only a year after, the No More Heroes. To me, I put this as the band in motion. It's a band moving forward. And I guess, but you said that La Folie was after this, so it makes sense why they went into even to more experimental stuff after this. So yeah, but I enjoyed it. But yeah.
No, I'm glad.
Very different.
I thought this. I think this could go either way because it's so strange, and I think definitely The Raven. You said it was the one that you listened to and you didn't quite get right. I did not get it the first time I listened to it at all. It took quite a few listens, and as actually did the next album that I picked. So we've had Ice, and now we have Ice Queen from Oral Sculpture, and I wrote that this sounds like early Simple Minds / Human League as well. We still have that going on, but we're now on their 8th album, still in 1984, so their 8th album in less than 10 years, and it was the first album on a new label. So they were in United Artists, and now they're on Epic Records. And I think because Feline, the album before, was very acoustic-y guitar, they wanted something quite different, and I think they rejected a lot of I think they rejected the demos from this. Yeah. And I found it interesting. Hugh Cornwell said that he saw this moment of the band as filling in the space that Roxy Music had left open, which I thought was quite interesting. And I enjoyed the review saying that the album is an out-and-out shock. The Stranglers have gone sensual, sounding sincere, serene, and sensitive, and philosophically introspective. It took them 9 years, but they're at their peace now. And I think it's definitely a different side to them. So Ice Queen, I've put medieval Guinevere vibes. You can... The way I'm not a very visual person, but I see Hugh Cornwell dancing with a maiden in some kind of medieval modern dance. He's got a very smooth delivery. It's not sneery Hugh Cornwell. And then you have some extremely unexpected horns that I think anyone else would sound terrible. But they're used kind of sparingly and strangely well, despite it kind of being syncopated and stuff. And I think it's a really great representation of their post-punk evolution. And I think this song and the last, you have to keep reminding yourself, this is the same band that did Golden Brown. Sounds totally different, even though this song is only 2 years later. So yeah, what did you think?
So I would say this is the worst song on the playlist for me.
Oh, really? That's so interesting.
So I should maybe listen to this album. This album is their last 4-star album. It's the last well-reviewed album.
When you say 4 stars, is
out
it
out 5? So,
but as in on what rating is that?
That's off All Music and other websites. It's the last album they got like a decent review for across the board. And I thought this song was a bad 80s. And yeah, when those sax stabs, which I thought at first was the keyboard, but it turns out is a horn section. It really shocked me. And that keyboard riff I found really irritating, unfortunately. So I put not a pleasant experience of Stranglers.
So the opposite of what I wrote, because there's a false ending, right?
Yeah.
So you must have hated that because you must have thought, oh, this song I don't like this ending. And then it continues a bit more. And I feel the opposite. I feel like this song leaves me wanting more, but I do have to say it was not an immediate like for me. I thought this album was weird.
Something I heard, I don't know if you heard this, that in the mid to late 80s, they had on the live show a horn section.
Yes.
And they said the reason they did that was because they're crap live and they're boring. And they wanted to give the audience something to look at. And when they got a new singer who was younger and energetic, they got rid of the horn section because they literally, and I've seen this on YouTube, they are just 4 guys just standing there. They do little more than that, really. The
thing is, I think they weren't like that at the beginning, were they? Because they're giving it all that at the beginning. But how old were they? Maybe, Jack Black was in his 50s by this point, and they were just tired. I didn't realize it was because of that.
Yeah.
How interesting.
But for me, horns do not work with a punk band, but hey.
I think for me, it works because of the synth sounds. And yeah, for me it works, for you it doesn't. So there we go. A bit more divisive, maybe.
And another song that doesn't work.
Well, you know, I had to give a song. I had to put on a song here that wasn't with Hugh Cornwell. So this is Golden Boy from their 12th album, About Time in 1995. And Paul Roberts is the singer here. And it's produced and engineered by Alan Winstanley, who'd worked on their first 4 albums. And the reason I chose it is because it's a bit like the Ramones song that we were saying, like, about how is this sounding so punk in the 80s? Well, how is this sounding so punk in 1995? It in a way, I could see the argument that it's a bit of a step backwards, but it's in 9/4. There's a gospel choir, and there is a singer who is. I think Paul Roberts sounds like a jazz singer or a crooner or something like that. Yeah, singing over a rock song. Yeah, you as well, right? Like, so I just thought, again, it's so original. And actually, is it about Sid Vicious? It seems like it is. Obviously, I wanted to give you a representative playlist. This wouldn't be one of my 10 favorite Stranglers songs. If I was going to do that, it would be maybe half of it from La Folie. But I still think it's 1995. They've still got it, and yet have not necessarily improved on it, but mashed it up a little bit. And I respect them for that.
Yeah, I put down, I'm not a fan of his crooner vocals, but I listened to a thing, and apparently he just walked into their audition room and said, "Hi guys, I'm your new singer." And they hired him. And he had never been in a band before.
Incredible.
That's bizarre.
See, I saw an interview with him where he was talking about how difficult it was to fill Hugh Cornwell's shoes, and how he said something like, "Oh, at one point I was trying to be Mick Jagger." And you can tell, like, he's kind of topless in some performances, way more energetic. And I think it must be quite difficult to come in. So what was at this point, 12 years after this band had formed, with 10 albums, and keep the balance between delivering the kind of vocal that a band wants and yet bringing your own thing to it. So respect for him. And he stuck it out with them for quite a while. I don't mind his crooner voice. Like, it's not as original as Hugh Cornwell, but I think it works for this song. Although, did you see the video for this song? It's fucking weird.
No, I haven't.
It's like really weirdly filmed, sort of psychedelic angles. There's people's human statues interspersed with like news items and Yasser Arafat. And I'm like, again, what's the point here? Like, I don't see the point. But I know
it's a big flop. It seems like they've got to for mid-90s and like, let's keep going. It doesn't sound like a band enjoying themselves to me.
I can understand why it wasn't as popular, but I still think I think this is the kind of song that if it was done by anyone else, I would really not like it. But because it's got all these touches like the gospel choir and the weird time signature, it for me it works. But I do get that that doesn't work for you. But I hope that the last song.
Well, yes, you have saved the best to last.
So I have picked Always the Sun, which is both from Dreamtime 1986, the 9th album, and 10 in 1990. They released it as a different version. This song almost always makes me cry when I listen to it, and I went to watch the video this morning, which I'd seen before, and then I went to read the YouTube comments about how, this was played at my granddad's funeral, this was played at my son's funeral, and I fully burst into tears once again. I don't know what it is, because it is a bit sentimental, and normally I'm a little bit allergic to that. But I think it's the sincere synths, and you've got this sort of acoustic guitar and country guitar. It elevates this beyond your average Stranglers song. And the lyrics are so easily accessible. It's obviously about kind of, even when you're going through bad times in your life, there's always the sun. So it hits me like a hammer every time, and a nice one too, not like the hammer that Hugh Cornwell uses to smash up the sundial in the video. But yeah, and it sounds like you agree that I've saved the best to last, right?
It's bizarre, this song, because
it shouldn't work.
But also, Hugh Cornwell's voice is never like this again, is it? Because he sings it melts. It flows beautifully. The harmonies, like the high harmonies. Is that JJ singing that?
I think so, and Dave as well.
Because his voice is usually quite low. So I never knew that was actually him. And I can't find a decent version live, unfortunately. But the guitar playing at the end is beautiful. It's sort of like it dances with the harmonies, and it just gets better and better. And as soon as that bridge comes in and the drums go up to the top, oh my heart! Oh yes, I can listen to the song again and again and again. And I was shocked when I bought that best of, I that it was them because I knew the song, but I had never connected that to being the Stranglers.
But this is my point. This is my point that people don't know. I don't want to say the real Stranglers because this is only one side. People don't know all the sides of the Stranglers. Again, my boyfriend, sorry, Steve, bringing you in here again. I told him the other band are doing is Stranglers, and he was like, "Who?" And I put on Golden Brown for a second, and he was like, "Oh, all right, this band." And it just like this is so beautiful, and it didn't do as well as they thought they would. So Hugh tells its whole story about how they thought it was going to do really well. They were convinced it was going to be another Golden Brown. And then when they went to look at the figures, they were like, "What? It hasn't." I don't know why. Do you know why? I mean, I guess it's mid 80s. There's,
it could literally be down to what songs came out that week. Like it could have been against 3 big songs, and because I was shocked, and I heard that they re-recorded it like 4 times because they knew this was going to be big. We had to get it right. But it did say though, but I think it's quite big in Europe, just not in the UK.
Yes. So, but I mean, 15 in France, 16 in Ireland. And it says on Wikipedia, it says that it nearly broke the Stranglers in the US due to radio play, which it surprises me that they're not broken in the US, although I'm sure they're pretty sneery about the US. It wouldn't surprise me if they, were Manic Street Preachers-esque as discussed on Song by Song podcast.
Who knew 45 years later, they'd be still doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like this song is definitely my early favorite. And I'm pleased to see that song has already had 232,000 plays, and the song dedicated to Dave called "And If You Should See Dave" has already had 328,000. And they have this video with Stuart Pearce, who's like a long-term fan of theirs. So I do have a feeling like maybe because as well of Dave passing away and stuff, like this album is going to get a higher profile than any of their albums recently. But I've really enjoyed going through their back catalogue. And there's always something, like there's always 1 or 2 songs on every album that are interesting. And even on albums that I do know, like The Raven, like Oral Sculpture, I still haven't got it. I still haven't listened to it enough times to get it. And that's the joy of it. And I really don't want to rush with them. I really am enjoying it. And I'm sure that if I do this again in 5 years' time, I'm going to have a totally new playlist of songs that I like.
Yeah, I think they're a band too. I think I read that they had a hit single every year from 1977 to 1990, which is kind of high praise to that band. I would say that I guess they are underrated too, because in the UK especially they are maybe a 2 or 3 song band. And if I didn't buy the best of, I wouldn't have discovered. I like Skin Deep, love that track. And Duchess, and 96 Tears, etc., etc. So to me, they are underrated. So guys, listen to the Stranglers.
I'm delighted to hear that, because even the 2 or 3 songs that they're known for all sound completely different. If you say that they are Peaches, No More Heroes, Always the Sun, Golden Brown, 4 completely different. Okay, No More Heroes and Peaches, same era, but still quite different. And how many people were singing about Leon Trotsky? But they are absolutely a band worth sitting down and listening to the albums to. And while, undeniably they have a lot of listeners and quite a loyal fan base from what I see, I think they're underrated just because for what they're known for and what they're not known for. So I'm delighted that you agree.
Good.
What a harmonious episode.
Goodbye, guys. Thanks for listening.
You've made it to the end, and that means you've made it to my chat about wanting to receive some ratings and have some subscribers. Yes, we know that all podcasters do this, but Spotify has now allowed ratings on podcasts, and we still only have, I think, 3 ratings on our podcasts. So if you're feeling generous and patient, we would really appreciate you doing that and subscribing so we get higher numbers in it. And if you disagree with this approach or my tone, you can get in touch. We are at OU Music Pod on Twitter, at Overunderrated Music Pod on Instagram, or you can email us at overunderratedmusicpod@gmail.com. Have a marvelous day. Merry holidays and Christmas where you are, and see you soon.